All right. So, what types of psychopaths are there?
Well, a lot of people have different opinions on different types of psychopaths. I sort of designated two basic characteristics. One is the primary psychopath who appears to have been born that way and might be genetic or epigenetic. We're not sure. There's arguments back and forth, but they certainly exhibit those psychopathic qualities early in life. You can see them, they're 5 years old and they're already, chopping off the ears of the kitty cat with a pair of scissors, and that kind of behavior, if you've ever, met a child psychopath or know the parents of a child psychopath, well, it's a horror movie, people can't sleep. They're worried their 10-year-old's going to sneak into their bedroom and cut their throats. So it seems to there is a kind of a primary psychopath, and then there's a secondary. And you guys were discussing that at the last show. I forget what you called them. A synthetic psychopath. What was it? The term you used?
Pseudo psychopath.
A pseudo-psychopath. Yeah, and many of the researchers notice and the same type of psychopath. They often use the term subclinical or a secondary or created psychopath. Anyways, it's a type of person who probably wasn't born with a genetic disposition towards this condition, but they've picked it up through their environment, and they are forced either through group pressure or as a result of abuse and drug abuse and abuse and drug abuse to assume the characteristics of a psychopath. Now, they may feel bad afterwards, but when they're under the influence of the group or under the influence of those drugs, they are in fact a psychopath and are no more reasonable than any primary psychopath would be. A typical example, and I remember you guys were talking about this. I think Joe Atwell brought this up too, and it's something I discussed in another article I was writing, and that is when soldiers are brought into boot camp. The army uses the lure of the warrior ethic to bring the guys in, and young men want to be warriors. They want to protect their country and get the girl. So they enter boot camp, and then what happens in boot camp is a dehumanizing process. You're turning these guys upside down and inside out and conditioning them and brainwashing them into becoming a psychopath because it's just taking orders and don't think for yourself and do what you're told. And so they're sent off to Afghanistan and Iraq, and they take part in horrific war crimes, and they come back, and now they're released back into society, and the conditions that created the psychopathic personality in them, such as the army system, are now removed, and now they have to come home, and their conscience starts to kick in. And now they feel bad about what they did, and they don't feel proud about having been a Marine.
Sure. In fact, returning vets from the Iraq War are the highest rate of suicide.
And you wonder why it's the highest rate of suicide. I have a pretty good idea. It's just a theory, but my theory is that they were turned into psychopaths through the whole
And
machinery.
they were secondary psychopaths, and then they wake
Secondary.
up, right? And then they can't deal with their actions and realizing that it was all order taking, and not even for our country, for that matter.
Exactly. And all for what? All for nothing. They sold their souls. They committed wartime atrocities, and now they have to live with that for the rest of their lives, and you can't even justify it. I mean, it's sad. It's a terrible situation for them. So that's the secondary psychopath.
All right. What about